you got a leaked memo yesterday that indicates there's going to be about 400 job cuts as part of the new budget.
Yeah, and that's what they're forecasting. They expect that there's going to be a reduction of about 400, the equivalent of 400 full-time jobs, right? They deal with like full-time equivalents, so
right,
it could be 800 half-time jobs, but and so we got this leaked memo. This memo was kind of distributed internally at City Hall to the sort of different leadership teams. It was distributed to managers to try to help them know how to talk to their staff about what's happening. There is understandably a lot of uncertainty at the city right now because they're looking at job cuts and this, what they're calling a back to basics budget. But a lot of city staff are unsure what that's going to mean, what it means for their specific jobs. Of course, this comes at a time when other levels of government are also looking to reduce the size of their workforces. The BC government, the government of Canada, just with this week's federal budget, they're looking at reducing the size of the public service. So it does come at a time. And of course, it's a time where there's also a lot of contraction in the private sector workforce too.
Right.
So
and this is both,
to Vancouver.
As you reported, this is both union and non-union positions.
Yeah. So as far as I'm aware, our story that's in today's paper, I think that might be the first time that it's been publicly reported that the city expects that there could be hundreds of unionized jobs that could be eliminated as a result of this. We do not have any insight as to what those jobs are right now. At this stage, we don't know. As city councilors say, they don't know what kind of jobs could be going. But yeah, they're looking at about a third of the jobs would be exempt jobs, which means non-union. A lot of times those are more senior kind of managers. So that would be about 10% of the city's total exempt positions. So 1 in 10 exempt positions could be gone. 2/3, about 270 positions, are expected to be union jobs, which would be about 3% of the city's unionized workforce. That's what they're expecting. And of course, they're still going through a sort of voluntary, I think they call it a voluntary separation program, where the city is put it out there to ask all the exempt staff who wants to put their hands up and maybe take an early retirement. In theory, I mean, if they get enough people putting their hands up for that, then maybe they don't need to do any involuntary layoffs. We don't know. It's
right
early on.
Are they doing the same on the union side, or is there a whole different process that we still need to figure out?
I don't know if they've done that yet.
Okay.
I not as far as I've heard, but I imagine that might be a possibility at some point. But I mean, that's often what you see. But I would imagine there's a whole process that needs to unfold for that to happen.
Right.
But there's a lot of, at this stage, still a lot of unanswered questions as far as details, things we don't know.
Now, the mayor's critics point out that in the first 3 years of Sim's government, there's been a net increase of 700 city employees, and now he's whipsawing the other way and laying off the equivalent of 400.
That's what people are saying. I mean, is that it's not as though there's been a concerted effort from early in the term to find efficiencies, hold vacancies, through natural attrition, just shrink the size of the workforce. The workforce grew by, as you say, 704 full-time equivalent positions over the last 3 years. And that's a mix of union and non-union staff. The city is not providing any information about where those people have gone, how many are in the police department, how many are library, engineering. The city is not providing that. Presumably they're going to provide some of that to council, but I don't know. So there has been a growth in the size of the city workforce over a number of years, and we don't know where those people have gone. But so now, they're looking.
I should say, I mean, that's shocking to me that information wouldn't be publicly available, so that we know, why would that be considered a state secret?
Nope, it's something I've asked for repeatedly. The only thing they would give me so far is the percentage, how many are union and how many are non-union. I mean, I think I will keep asking. At a certain point, I think it becomes I think it is. I mean, I think it's noteworthy if they're refusing to say where those people went. did they add 700 people to engineering, or did they add one person to engineering, or 500 to the police department? I don't think any of those. Yeah, no, but like, yeah, we really have no idea.
Well, so we'll wait and see, and you'll dig away on that, and I'm sure you'll be able to tell us. I mean, we also don't know where the 400 might come from. We have sort of very broad percentages by department, but nothing finely tuned. And that, again, the mayor's critics are saying, how can we support this? We don't even know what the impact is going to be. Will that come out, or is there any opportunity for that to come out as part of the budget approval process?
So the way that things will go next with the budget approval process, we had yesterday is when they released hundreds of pages of budget documents, including the draft budget for 2026. So yesterday afternoon was our first chance to look at this. There's hundreds of pages of documents, changes to user fees, there's not, as far as I can tell, my first look through this, there's no real detail in terms of saying who they're going to remove in which department or which services specifically they're going to look at reducing. It just kind of gives broad overviews in like 20 different categories of city spending. This one's going to go up, these ones are going to go down, and by this percentage. So you have this broad idea, but no further insight, at least at this point. And as far as I know, I think that is going to be largely the information that council has to base their decision on. They might get a little bit of more in-camera information before. And then what's going to happen is next week, I shouldn't say that. They are going to get some more information next week. There's a special meeting next week where they're just going to deal with the budget all day, which will include opportunities for councilors to ask a lot of questions to city staff, and then they're also going to hear presentations from leaders of various departments. Typically, there's a thing they do every year, so they hear from the police chief, they'll hear from the fire chief, hear from the head of libraries, the union locals that represent city workers. They're going to hear a series of presentations from these public bodies and stuff, and then also probably from members of the public, I imagine. But it's an opportunity for council to ask a lot of questions to city staff. They won't make a final decision about the budget next week. That will be coming in sort of late November. It's expected in late November. They'll have a budget meeting where they make an actual decision. But this is the concern that I keep hearing from the 4 councillors who are not affiliated with ABC. They're saying they're not necessarily opposed to some kinds of reductions or cuts, but they say that they're being asked to make decisions without knowing what the trade-offs are, or knowing they had tried to some of the non-ABC councillors did try to propose amendments to sort of ask for more information before they had to make a final decision. And that was shot down by the ABC majority. Some of the other councillors pointed out, and this is true, in 2022, one of the points in ABC's campaign platform was to start producing line by line detailed budgets for the public consumption so people can see line by line. And they actually said not only were they going to do it going forward, they were going to post them retroactively and make them publicly available so people could get a sense, where was all this additional money going? The City of Vancouver's operating budget has gone up so much faster than population growth or inflation, not just since ABC, but going back a few administrations. It's been growing dramatically, and ABC campaigned on this idea of fiscal responsibility. They wanted people to get not just a sense of where we're at now, but how did we get here? Where was all this headcount growth going on over the last number of years? They campaigned on that idea. They have not pursued implementing it since they've been in power.
So there's a broken promise right there with less than a year to go. So if I was a councillor and I had the director of planning as an example before me, and this might have to be done at an in-camera meeting, given that we may be talking about personnel, but I would want to know from that director of planning as one department head, okay, you've got to cut by 12%. How are you going to do that? That seems to me like I wouldn't be doing my job unless I could get an answer to that question.
Yeah. That's the position the non-ABC councillors are taking. Is that they don't want to.
Okay. So bigger picture, I know it's hundreds of pages, tough to absorb that less than 24 hours later, but that combined with other movements that we've seen from the mayor, and we're heading into an election year, has he put his stamp on the city? And if he has, what does that look like?
I mean, for them, certainly a big priority, both in the last election campaign and since they've taken office. A big priority for ABC is public safety. So when you hear Ken Sim speaking in public, you will very, very frequently hear him say that it's the first time in a number of years, I can't remember how many, that Vancouver's fire department is fully funded. And it's the first time in very many years that Vancouver's police department is fully funded. And so they say this over and over again. And it definitely was a big part of their campaign. Yes. They campaigned on hiring 100 additional new cops and as well as 100 mental health nurses to sort of like work in concert with them in some of those challenging issues. Anyway, so it's certainly been a big priority. That's something where they say ABC is proud to sort of, I think they would say they put their stamp on the city budget. The police department budget and the fire department budget have gone up, and are expected to continue to go up. I mean, to be clear, when we talk about a lot of the city departments looking at cuts under next year's kind of back to basics budget, the police department and fire department were both both in store for considerable boosts. Right. So that's one thing where they sort of see themselves putting their mark on it. I mean, I guess, and I think you could say that I think someone could say that this idea of a back to basics budget, looking at making tough choices, even though it does mean some people are going to lose their jobs, or even in theory, if they do find 400 people who all want to leave voluntarily, and who knows, that could be possible. So even if no one gets an involuntary layoff, it does still mean the city is going to make do with 400 fewer full-time people. So it's that would be a significant change, and people are definitely can disagree whether it's good or bad. At this point, I can think it's kind of hard to know the answer to that if you don't know which people and which roles are leaving.
Right.
But for a long time, people have said that the size of the city workforce was growing at a pace that was unsustainable, and that's an idea that Sim himself campaigned on, right? So making some cuts now, I think it does represent sort of putting his mark on the city. I mean, a 0% property tax increase at a time where there's so many fixed cost increases, right? Most of the city budget is salaries, and a lot of those salaries have fixed increases that the city doesn't have the choice to pay these people less. So the cost of all these materials is going up. There's all these costs that are outside of the city's control. So when you consider all the fixed cost increases, doing a property tax freeze means making some tough decisions. Now, people could say Sim should have done this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and they might have that feeling. But I would say it represents putting more of a sort of stamp on the city budget. And Sim has also said he sees this as the first of 2 years with a property tax freeze. He has said, if and when he and ABC are re-elected to a second term next year, that's going to be their target for the 2027 budget, is freezing property taxes again, which again would presumably mean more cuts, finding out where they would be. And in some ways, I mean, that might be even more challenging than getting a property tax freeze this year.
Right. So he's angling to go into the next election as the law and order mayor, campaigning on a property tax freeze, a continuation of a property tax freeze, which, is probably going to be somewhat popular with a certain segment, depending on what happens here and how these cuts come home to roost and who they affect. Boy, you've got a lot to unpack on the planning side, on every department there. So we'll let you get back to it, Ian, and maybe by next week, things will be hopefully a little clearer. At least we'll have some more questions we need answered for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thanks, Harold.
Okay, thank you.